Good morning, I'm Bobb Biehl, and since 1976, I've been a consultant to large and fast-growing churches, to nonprofit organizations, to for-profit companies, and occasionally to a government agency. And what I've learned in that time is that a lot of people who are in leadership want to give the image that everything is under control, but when you get one-to-one, they often say, help, how do I refine this? How do I get to where I can transfer it? They ask questions that they wouldn't ask in public. And it's my guess that you may be asking a question about how do I get things more organized? How do I refine them? How do I get it to where it's transferable? How do I get it to... Are any of you church planters in here? Any church planters? Okay. Any pastors? Any of you work in churches quite a bit? Okay. You may be asking, how do I get it so that our church is more effective? How do I get it so that it works better? How do I get it so that people come more? It's my opinion that if you draw a circle around your church, and when I say church, the rest of you attend church, so just apply it to your own nonprofit or your organization. Apply the same principles to your organization, but we'll illustrate it with a church. What you do is you basically say, okay, if this is us as a church, how many people how big a radius do we draw from? And let's say you say 5 miles. Let's say you say 5-mile radius. Then how many people live in that radius? You say, oh, maybe 100,000. And I say, then, in my opinion, 10,000. If 100,000 people live within 5 miles of the church, 10,000 of them, or 10% of how many ever live there, would like to attend your church. They would like to attend your church. They want to come to your church. They just don't know about it, or when they get there, something turns them off instead of turning them on. And Larry Osborne, who's a pastor in the U.S., has a concept where he calls raving fans. He wants to basically build a church where it isn't just that people go, ho-hum, I have to go to church again. He doesn't want to build a church where you have to say, oh, next Sunday, bring your neighbor, bring your neighbor, bring your neighbor. He wants it so that the church experience is so exciting and so positive that people just start saying, you've got to come to this church, you've got to see it. It's not like a church you've gone to any other place. They're raving fans. So one year, he basically took a team, and he said, from the time the car enters our lot, this is a little car, enters our parking lot, their wheels cross the walk coming into our church, to the time their wheels leave the church. Let's study and see where the blockage is. What's keeping them from coming to the church? Basically, you could lay it out this way. What are the steps involved when a person enters? Do they go to the guest registration? Do they go to the nursery? What step by step, where do people want to go? And what do they need to do next? And what needs to be there next? And is that red, yellow, or green? And what he then did was have the team study for 1 year and make the changes necessary so that when a person came to church, everywhere they went, it seemed smooth until they left. The nursery wasn't dark and musty. It had bright colors, and it had new cribs, and it had, the youth department didn't have the, old colors and pews or whatever. It had, nice bands and pretty colors, and still preaching the gospel message, but it just changed. And so that when you came onto campus, there were signs that told you where to go instead of people being confused. So what they did was they studied, all right, how about our parking lot? How about the signs going into the church? How about the nursery? How about the junior high? How about the senior high? How about the... And when people give money, is it processed properly? And they went around and they basically studied everything in the church to see, does this work right? Until the person leaves our property. And what they found was that when it came to the parking lot was so full when people got there that people were coming and trying to come to the church, and they couldn't even get in the parking lot. So they just went away. They found that when it came to signage, that people would be confused. They'd come in and they watched them, and they'd come in something like this, like, where are we supposed to go? Like, where's the nursery? We got a baby. Where's the nursery? And where's our junior high kid supposed to go? So they had to fix the signage to let people know clearly where to go, etc. They found that quickly they identified a few key blockage points that were just huge, and they fixed those first, but they went through the whole process and tried to fix what was broken. You know what they found? The next year their attendance doubled. Because people want to come to your church. They want to do business with you. But if when they get there, they have to wait in line a long time, or if they have to do something, they aren't going to rave about it. You know what he found? That people will put up with almost anything to come to a church they like. They'll put up with almost anything. They'll put up with parking problems, signing. They'll put up with almost anything to come to a church they like. But they won't ask a friend to come and put up with the same thing. So what you want to do is study your whole system and find out where is the blockage in our whole system, from the time someone accepts Christ to the time they're a mature believer. What are the steps involved in that process? And where is it that we lose 80% of our people? Maybe at 7 weeks we lose 80% of our people because no one follows up step 7. What 2 or 3 processes do you have in your organization that could be likened to this? When a new Christian becomes a Christian, how do we follow them up to maturity? When a new client or patient comes in, how do we follow them to the point where they're healthy and whole? It's like in our organization, what are the steps involved that something goes through, and where are our problems? This is a key to transferability also. Let's say you're bringing a new staff member on, and you basically take them through the process. You say, all right, let's go around the campus, and let me introduce you to the campus. Let me introduce you to the church. You go in and say, here's where people park. We bring them here. There are clear signs everywhere as to where they go. Let's go visit the nursery. Let's go show you where the junior high is. Or if it's going, let's go stand in the back and watch the junior high. Let's go watch the senior high. In other words, it lets you orient a person very quickly to what's going on. If it's harvesting fruit, you say, here's when we plant, here's when we fertilize, here's when we this, 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 here's where we take it to market. And then what you do is you put together a notebook or files in your computer that say everything you need to know about step 1, planting or plowing or whatever it is you're doing, or receiving patients, step 1, everything you need to know about that is in tab 1. Here's a sample of the entrance form we have. Here's a sample of whatever sample you want. You just put it in tab 1. And it makes it very transferable. When I worked at World Vision back in 71 to 76 or somewhere back in there, one of the programs I developed was the Love Loaf program. It was a little container in the shape of a loaf of bread, money container in the shape of a loaf of bread. Hold your pocket change. Put it on the dining room table, and your family sits around and puts their pocket change in there for the day and prays for the people without food. And then you bring it to the church at the end to give it to the world hunger. And I worked on that for about a year and a half, getting it going, getting it all set up. And we had 41 blocks like this, 41 or 42 blocks like this, that when the first person asks for some love loaves, what do we do with it then, and what do we do with it then, and where do we go to the computer, and then when it, just basically what the steps are. And then I had notebooks with 41 or 42 tabs in them, and everything to do with tab 1 was in there. Sample of invoices, sample of vendors, the contact information for the vendors. It was just everything you need to know about that was in that tab. When I decided it was time to leave World Vision and start our company, they actually asked a lady from the computer services to come up and take it over. Now, granted, she worked at World Vision, but she had never been in my office before. And when she came in, I said, Pat, let me show you the big picture on the Love Loaf program. And I showed her basically the whole 41 steps. It was laid out more like this, but it was, let me show you the 41 steps. And I go through and just give her a quick overview. And I said, anything you've got a question, stop me. And we turn on a recorder. So it recorded. And I said, all right, step 1 is this, step 2 is this. Any questions, step 3. Just took her through it quickly. And then I said, now, I'd like to take you through it in some detail. Then I turned to the notebook and I said, turn to tab 1. Everything you need to know about step 1 is in tab 1 because you measured these blocks along the way. So everything to do with tab 1 is in tab 1. Step 1 is in tab 1 of your notebook. Took her through that. Any questions on that? No? All right. Step 2 on your process chart or your process or your flow chart. Step 2, tab note in your notebook. Everything you need to know about step 2 is in here. It took 2 hours to orient her to a multi-million-dollar program. 2 hours. I said, look, when I leave here, I'm going to leave World Vision. But this is my baby. I designed it. I developed it. I developed it. Call me day or night to let me know any problems you've got with it because I don't want this to fail. After a 2-hour orientation, I transferred the whole program to her. She never called me one time. In 2 hours. Because there was a very clear process involved and there was backup for every single step. All the things you need to know about each step was in that notebook. And you can do the same with your church or organization in this form, more of a process or flow chart, or something that looks like this, and say, do you understand step 1? Check. Step 2, check. Step 3, check. And orient someone very quickly. The transferability is incredible. Then the refinement. You basically say, okay, how do we refine each of these steps? Sometimes step 17 needs to replace, transfer, and you need to change this step ahead of this step to refine the process. Sometimes you eliminate a step. You say, you know what? We really don't need this step anymore. 10 years ago we did, but we don't need this step anymore at all. Sometimes you have to add a step right here that you come up with. That's refining the process as you continue to work with it. And it's clear communications. It's like, is this clear about what the major components of a healthy church are from our perspective that creates raving fans? Is that clear? Yes, it is. Or what do you mean by this one? Or what do you mean by this one? It's clear communications. Now, in terms of credibility, here's a statement you don't ever want to forget. When your visibility exceeds your ability, it'll destroy your credibility. In other words, let's say you're a church pastor and you're going along, minding your own business, And the local news calls you, your local television station calls and says, we'd like to feature your church. A couple of your raving fans have told us about your church. And we'd like to feature it on the nightly news. And let's say you have a church of, let's say you have a church of 100, and the next Sunday, 50 people visit because they saw it on the news. No, you go from 100 to 150 in one Sunday. What you can do is anticipate. You can say, all right, if we had 50 extra people come in some Sunday, would we be able to, what would be the problem? Where would we not be able to accommodate them? And you say, right here, we can only handle 10. But our parking could only handle 5 more cars. Well, you better fix this, or when this happens, people are going to say, well, I saw it on television, but I went there and they weren't able to even find me a parking spot. So I don't think that church is credible anyway. I don't think I want to go there. That's not a good church to go to. And they won't come or stay or invite their friends. Refinement processes the rails on which refinement runs. You've heard the statement. Some people have 25 years worth of experience, and some people have 1 year worth of experience 25 times. This is the way to get 25 years worth of experience. When every year you look at the whole process and say, what have we learned this year about planting, plowing, accepting clients, running the church? What have we learned about the junior high, the high school, the parking, the giving, the whatever? One of the things that Larry Osborne said in Raving Fans, he said, we've learned that 20 years ago this wasn't the case, but now kids under 20 don't have any cash with them. Most kids under 30 don't have any cash with them. Young people under 30, they don't carry any cash. So when the offering plate comes by, they just pass it to the next person. But he said they all use ATMs. They all use credit cards and go to ATMs and just put their information in and give money that way or pay for something on credit cards. So we put a credit card machine, an ATM, right in the sort of patio area of the church. And he said every Sunday we have a line of some people under 30 lining up to put their tithes and offerings in the ATM machine. Well, that's a new step. Maybe you add that. You didn't have to have it back here, but you need it here. That's something new. Well, you got more experience. You add something. And then lastly, transferability, we've talked about that, and systems. Let's say, for example, you look and say, what are the things that could handle 50 new people? And you say, well, this could handle 50, this could, everything to here, but this could only handle 10 people. My friend Ed Grumman said, double the strength of the weakest link in a chain and you double the reliability of the entire chain. You may be able to grow 50 people, but if you can only accommodate 10 here, how much are you going to grow? You're not going to grow 50, you're going to grow 10. If your sanctuary will only seat 10 more people, even though 50 come or try it, you're only going to keep 10 because that one link wasn't big enough. So you basically study the whole process and find out where is the weakest link in the whole system, and you fix that first. So if you move, if 50 people want to come and you can move this to 20, you've just moved the whole chain to where now 20 people can come. Well, when someone taught me this the first time, it was like letting me out of a cage, because I could see how organized things could be, how clearly you could look at what all are we doing in a single step-by-step process and get there. I hope you have the same exact experience and use it effectively for the rest of your life.